Hi there, thank you so much for supporting this brand new series on Conversation, something really different to what we've done in the past. This is Make Your Mark with Erin, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And if you're new to Conversation, then where have you been the last 5 years? There are over 350 things that you can go and watch on demand on the website, along with over 100 upcoming live events and meetups as well.
Each session will include a live demonstration of me doing mark making, and you can work alongside me. I'll try not to go too fast, but again, it will be available on demand. So you can always pause, get yourself ready, and then, progress with watching the recording. So the three sort of key objectives that I sort of envisaged for the course is the first one is about really trying to loosen up and play. So that's I really want everyone to have as much fun as possible. And it's about trying out these new techniques in order to find your own mark making voice. And I guess the second objective is about kickstarting your creative practice. If perhaps you're a photographer, you've never really made a lot of arts, this is about helping you introduce you to things in a way that's exploratory. But you may already be making art. And so this course can also help you refresh and deepen your own art practice. And then I think the third, which is actually in some ways the most important, is about connection. So I'm going to make the argument that mark making is about communication. And I think this course will be a really great opportunity to connect with yourself, connect with your art practice, but also connect with other creatives. I think later on we'll explain it to you, but we are going to be setting up a sharing board. So if you do any work related to the course in between the sessions, then it would be great if you could share it on there. No pressure, of course. But yeah, it'll be an opportunity to see what other people are up to and how they've been inspired. So I guess the other thing as well is that, by the end of the series, I really hope that you'll come away with a sketchbook filled with mark making compositions, collage papers, and some new skills ready for you to use at home. And also, actually, I would argue, be able to transfer into your photography practice, because I think there's a lot of overlap really between the two, and all levels of experience are welcome. So the last thing I'm just going to say in this little introduction is about the format of each session. So what we'll be doing is we'll start out with a little bit of an introduction to what we're going to cover in the session. Then we will probably do an artist spotlight where I'll show you some artists that I'm inspired by and how they use the techniques that I'll be introducing. And then we'll do a 20 to 40 minute live demonstration where you can work alongside me. And at the end, hopefully we'll have enough time to reflect and you can ask some questions. Oh, sorry, got a frog in my throat. I'll also make space as we go along for you to ask questions. So please do write them in the chat as we go through. Okay, so mark making. I really want to convey how amazing and how important mark making is. I promise I won't talk through the whole session. We will be doing some really cool making ourselves, but I just want to, get you as excited as I am about mark making. So mark making is the creation of patterns, lines, shapes, textures on a surface using any available tool or material. You can use your fingers, sticks, paint, crayons, pens, anything that you find nearby. I also argue that it's a fundamental skill to artistic practice. It really allows for self-expression and the development of motor skills, which is very important when making art. But also, perhaps most importantly, it's about exploring the creative possibilities, but without a predetermined outcome. So in this course, we won't necessarily be making final pieces of art. It'll be much more about exploring the process and enjoying the process of making with your hands. I also think it's a really important part of early childhood development. So it's actually something that a lot of children do, and you'll see your own kids and grandkids very freely making marks, and it's something we lose touch with later in life. So it's really worth practicing and rehearsing. So this, I hope this is big enough for you to see. This is an amazing image of a cave painting in France, which is actually over 9,000 years old. Can you believe that? 9,000 years old. And, it shows this incredible, very gestural, large-scale mark making that's been made communally by, a bunch of different people. And also, these handprints have actually been made by holding your hand up against the wall and then blowing pigment across the hand to create this incredible imprint. And for me, this is the beginning of mark making. This is evidence that we've been making marks since we've been around as humans. And what they do is they express the human touch. They have this human quality and an emotional power. I think for me, looking at this image, I can see the intimate details of the hands of people from 10,000 years ago. And that mark has been everlasting. So I think that's another aspect which is so important, which is about the emotional power and the communication element of mark making. Another thing which I think is quite interesting is that there's some theories that some of the hands that are shown have got what looks like fingers missing. And actually, people have speculated that it was the beginning of sign language. So people were sort of moving their different finger shapes and then spraying, and that was a way of communicating. So it's early writing. So I guess that's another thing I'll come back to again and again, is the idea of your handwriting and how important that is in terms of communication and influencing your work. So I have got a couple of my own pieces of work, but I would actually just encourage you to watch the wonderful podcast that Mark and I made, because I go into a lot of detail about my work. And so I won't dwell on it for too long, but I just wanted to show you just an overview. So these are some sketches that I've worked on. They're actually scans from my sketchbook. So this is using charcoal and graphite. And it just shows, the kind of very varied marks that can be made when conveying landscape, which is my particular fascination. I'm also a printmaker. So here's some examples of my mono prints. So these marks are made with pressing ink into plates and then putting them through a printing press. And then what I've done is I've manipulated the ink. So this is actually using combs and brushes and bits of card and things like that. So, and then also printing them over the top of each other. So thinking about layers of marks. And then these are some examples of my paintings. So, here I'm using much more standard tools, paint brushes, things like that. But occasionally I also use grasses and natural elements that are found in the landscape to convey and to make marks and to kind of create this amazing textures that you see. So again, if you want to see more about my work, then either go to my website or watch the podcast. So I think I mentioned that at the beginning of each session, I'd really like to show you some artists that have influenced me. So this is one you'll all have heard of course, Van Gogh. He's a Dutch post-impressionist painter who is definitely one of the most influential figures in the history of Western art. But what actually is incredible is these aren't his paintings, these are his drawings. So he's got an ink drawing here and a pencil drawing here. And he makes these incredibly deliberate, expressive marks and directional strokes to convey texture, motion, and depth. And I think what's so interesting is that he really articulates each mark individually, and that's part of his signature style. And he really believed that mark making was fundamental to art. And he would use, stippling and dots for grass, long vertical lines, all these incredible shapes, and it makes it so dynamic, like it's moving. So the second artist I wanted to draw attention to, so you may not have heard of this one. So this is Norman Ackroyd. So he's a fantastic printmaker, a master of intaglio printing. So he did a lot of etching and aquatint. And he made these incredible prints that were expansive landscapes. But how he captured the wildness of nature was with his marks. So he actually predominantly, if not completely, only worked in black and white and grey. So he worked in monochrome. So he really believed that the infinite potential of marks could tell the whole story that he wanted to tell. And, you know, these birds, for example, they're just simple gestures that he's made with the acid in order to make the etching. And this makes this very atmospheric, very emotionally powerful work. And so the last artist I was just going to highlight today was someone called Helen Frankenthaler. I'm probably pronouncing her name incorrectly. Please, you know, write in if I have. She's actually from the USA, so she's an American abstract expressionist painter. And she was a major contributor to the history of post-war American painting, and a real pioneer in terms of female artists. And mark making was a major feature of her work. So a lot of her work, she was actually solely focusing on the tools and materials. So she developed this method that was called soak stain. So what that was she was using an ungessoed canvas. So using exploring the potential of canvas as something that absorbs water, and then using really, really wet pigments to then create these incredible marks, which have the dense pigment in the center, and then the water kind of seeps out. So it has this very characteristic style. I really recommend you to look at her work. These incredible photos of her in the studio, just surrounded by massive marks that she's made. And there's a lovely quote from her, which is, "There are no rules. Let the picture lead you where it must go." So I think that's a really great ethos to be using when you're thinking about making marks. So just on a practical level, you will all have seen the materials list. I just wanted to just refresh, on that. You're probably well aware of what's written on the website. It looks quite long. I don't want you to be intimidated by it. I guess the main thing I want to say is you can make marks with just about anything. You don't really need any specialist equipment. So hopefully most of these things are things you already have. If you don't have particular things on this list, you can swap them for other things. So I think the main thing is making sure that you've got sort of thick enough paper that it can take a bit of water, because we will be using inks and things like that. So I would recommend, I think I've said 220 GSM, but you could go as high as 300 or higher. Ideally A3, but again, if you only have A4, that's fine. Pencils, hopefully you've got soft pencils. So you will want nice drawing pencils. Charcoal, I actually don't like using charcoal. It's like a sensory thing for me. It's like chalk on a chalkboard. So I don't use charcoal, but it's great for mark making. And again, this is about finding what you like. So if you like working with charcoal, please use that. Graphite sticks, I really recommend that. So I have got some here. So I use 6B and 9B. So Indian ink, that I would say is one of the sort of essentials of the course, because I use it quite a lot. So I use Dr. Martens, but I would say there's lots of different brands of Indian ink. And really, it just makes a really amazing waterproof, super dark black. So I would say that that's probably something that's worth investing. You don't need to get a massive pot of that. Not for today, but for the other sessions, it would be really good to have some hog's hair brushes. So I just got these from a decorating shop. They're not expensive. Basically, I've got a bunch of different ones. Ideally, they're natural fibers, because you get a bit more of an unpredictable texture from those. And then this is a really fun one. This is a massive one. And I don't really wash them properly. So you get, some of the bristles sticking together, which again makes for quite interesting mark making. I'd also, hopefully you've got, again, these, you can see how old and manky my brushes are that I use for mark making. Just a different range of sizes. Ideally, some square head ones, some round headed ones. So again, I would also recommend over this the time frames of the course to be sort of collecting things that you think might be quite interesting for mark making. So I've got some feathers here that I sometimes use. I've even got pebbles that you can ink up and roll around, and string. So there's all sorts of things you can use for mark making. So that's really up to you what you collect. I also like using toothpicks. You can also use kebab sticks. And then these are little pieces of card that I've cut up. I use them a lot for my mono printing. But yeah, any piece of card that you've got in your house, you can chop up and use. That's really good for making more graphic marks. Okay, so the next one is masking tape. So I don't have the perfect brand. I've never really got hold of a masking tape that doesn't rip paper. But I use something called frog tape, which is a decorator's tape, and I use the delicate one. So that is the least likely one to rip your paper, and we can use that for masking off edges and things like that. What else have we got? So water. So my family find it very annoying, but I'm constantly collecting glass jars and pots, sort of pasta sauce pots and things like that. And then I use these, like, for example, this is full of sand because I took it to the beach when I was on holiday to do some painting. But yeah, just use those for when you need to clean your brushes, and we're going to, when we're doing the demonstrations. I think we're nearly at the end here. So then, where are we? Kitchen roll. So you can use this kind of kitchen roll. I've actually got it down somewhere, but I've got what is called sort of blue roll, which you can get from DIY shops. I just prefer it because it doesn't have the grain. So it means if you need to put the kitchen roll on your work, you're not going to get a pattern. But again, you don't need to be super fussy about that. Very last thing, I promise. Last thing now. So we won't need this today, but we will need this for the week when we do the big scale stuff. Basically, I don't know if this is even in shop, but this is what's called lining paper. And basically it's really cheap, really big paper that's used by decorators to line walls before they put wallpaper on. You can get it from any DIY shop. And I would recommend getting the 1200, I think it's GSM or some measurement, but it's the thickest one. And what's great about this is it looks curly now, but as soon as it gets wet, it lies totally flat. So it's really good. And the main reason I'd recommend getting it is that you want to get big paper that's not too expensive so that you don't feel precious about going really crazy and making really big marks. And you can just keep rolling it out, chopping it off. So this is a really good investment, and they're not very expensive. Okay, that's a lot on material.
I'm going to say you've got lots of friends in the audience who really enjoy collecting jars as well.
Yes. I mean, basically I've got more jars than I could shake a stick at the moment. But you can never have too many, I don't think.
I'm going to say to people, just while you're setting up, Erin, that if anybody is running this along with us, take a photograph on your mobile phone of your setup and your messy setup right now, and then share it with us. We'd love to see your setup. We won't judge you at all.
Okay, so where are we? Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is sketchbooks. So I really love sketchbooks, and I'll probably talk about it quite a lot during the course. So I just want to show you that, my approach to sketchbooks is very personal. So everybody, you might already have your favorite type of sketchbook, and that's absolutely fine. But I just wanted to show you what I do. So when I first started getting creative again, I used this, which is just a really simple bound sketchbook. And what you can see is I will make things, stick it in, and then I often do a lot of annotations. I really recommend that. That's great for remembering what you were thinking when you were making that thing. So I really recommend, this approach. I've actually moved over because I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but the fear of the white blank sketchbook. Some people find buying a notebook from a shop and then getting intimidated, then you have a pile of them and you never do anything in them. So I've got a hack for how I get over that. So this here is a homemade sketchbook that I've made. And basically all it is a piece of cardboard, which I've then covered in fancy linen, but you don't have to do that. 3 rings, which are from... you can get them from any art shop, but they're called scrapbook rings. So you can get them in different sizes. And then all I do is I just literally, everything that I've made, I just hole punch it and stick it in. And what it means is that you can change the order. You can have all different types of paper. You can print stuff off your printer and you can stick it all in, and you can add things in later, and, you know, complete flexibility. Also, the great thing about this approach is you can have things that are wet and let them dry and then put them in your sketchbook. So if you go and, so for example, today we'll be making stuff and it will be really soggy. So you wouldn't be able to turn the page of your sketchbook. Whereas if you do something like this, then you can. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, so that's just something. So this is another example of one that I made, which was just literally like a piece of mount board. You can even see the barcode there. 4 rings, which are scrapbook rings. And then all I've done is just taken my work and then, you know, I just hole punch it. And I've got a whole range of different things in there. So what I'll be doing is I'll probably make one of these for this course for me to use. So it's something you might consider for yourself. Or you might have a whole stack of things that you've made previously, even photographs. You don't know what to do with it, then you could do this. So that's sketchbooks. So I think we're going to move on to doing some actual mark making now, which would be great. So what I would do is, if you could initially have a pot of water available. This is actually just for cleaning your brush. So if you don't have water available, you can always clean your brush at the end of the session. Then you need some Indian ink and some paper. So I'm just going to get some paper out now. I would recommend that it was an A3 piece of paper. But if it's your sketchbook or an A4 piece of paper, that's absolutely fine.
We think your sketchbook idea is a great idea, by the way, Erin.
Yeah?
We're all going to go and make that now.
Oh, I hope so. Honestly, I proselytize too much about my sketchbooks, but it's been a really good hack because it just means you're less precious, basically. You can just put anything in it in any order. And then you can have ones that are themed. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about it.
No, Christina's just said they're ordering the rings. Lord of the Rings. I was going to make a joke there, but I won't because I'm above that level of joke. I really am.
Okay, so then I would just get some paintbrushes, really any size at this time. I'm just going to put some... I didn't put it on the list, but for the next time, you might want some newspaper if you're worried about making a mess. I don't want to completely ruin this lovely cover that Mark's got on the desk. So I'm going to put some kitchen roll underneath here. And then we're just going to start making some marks. So completely unstructured initially, and just start exploring. So I'm quite lucky because in this pot, I've got a pipette. So I'm going to use the pipette to put some ink on the page. So if you haven't got a pipette, you can always just dip your, still making a mess already, dip your paintbrush directly into the pot. And then we're literally going to just start making marks. So I think the thing to think about initially is about pressure. So how hard are you pressing? You know, if you press very lightly with a paintbrush, you're going to get a very fine mark. The other thing I would say is I really love to hold the end of the paintbrush because you start to relinquish control, basically. Which means that you get a lot more sort of serendipitous marks that you wouldn't necessarily have made. I think if you already if you're already a painter or you already make art, then try and make marks now that are different to what you would usually make, if that's possible. And if you have this moment here where you've got like a whole pile of ink, then you can use the side of the brush to make really thick, lovely kind of calligraphic marks. And we're just going to keep going really until you've covered most of the paper. But at this point, I would keep the speed quite slow. So nothing too hurried, just something quite mindful. I guess is another thing to say is that this is going to be a really funny reference that some of you won't get, but there's a film called Karate Kid, right, which some of you might have heard of. And Mr. Miyagi asks the Karate Kid to paint the fence. And he's really frustrated. He's like, no, I want to do karate. I don't want to paint the fence. And then basically what you see is that Mr. Miyagi gets him to do this incredible action with his wrist. And what he's actually getting to do is improve the muscles in the wrist so that he has this like really elegant karate style. So very tenuous link there. But what I'm saying is that basically what you don't realize is that even though this may seem silly or it may seem futile, what you're actually doing is regulating your nervous system. So you're probably calming down, but you're also practicing using muscles in your hand that you might not have used before and opening up your practice to being able to make new shapes and new marks. The other thing as well, whilst you're doing this, is don't worry too much about what it looks like. I know that is like the opposite of what any art teacher's ever told you. But the main thing is you're trying to pick up the signals that your body is giving you about what you like the feeling of. So this is like a very sensory thing. Because what we often do in modern life is completely disconnect from our bodies and have no idea what we actually like. We do a lot of things out of a sense of duty. And we're constantly doing that at work. But what we're doing here is we're actually trying to get into tune with our senses. See, I'm quite enjoying the loops. You see, I don't know what shapes you're making. Maybe you're making zigzags. But doing these loops, I'm finding is very interesting. And I'm actually starting to spin the paintbrush as I go. And what I've chosen here is paper that is cold pressed. So what that means is that when the paper's made, I think they're pressed between blankets, and basically the blankets have a texture. Usually they're made of wool, I think. And so you get this thing what's called a tooth. So when you take the pressure off the paintbrush, you start to reveal the tooth of the paper. And some people really like that. Some people really don't. It's good for watercolor. So that's another thing that you want to start thinking about when you're buying paper and when you're buying sketchbooks is, do you have a preference for the type of tooth? Like, do you want to be using a completely 100% cotton paper? Do you mind if it's like a pulpy paper? Do you want to use recycled paper? I find that I really don't like using sort of copier paper for things like this because it gets wrinkly and that particularly upsets me. I really don't like wrinkly stuff. But, you know, I've got plenty of friends that tell me that that is not how they feel. So, again, just be led by what you like. So there's another thing is as a painter, I don't like canvas, which is just, you could consider to be a limitation as a painter. So I tend to paint on wood and I do a lot of preparation to make it very smooth. So I sand it and I size it and I gesso it. It's very ritualistic, really. So you're not just thinking about the ink that you're using, you're also thinking about the tool that you're making the mark with, and you're thinking of the substrate that you're making the marks onto. Okay, so I don't know if you've filled your page yet. And maybe you're looking at it thinking it's a horrible mess. And that's good. That means that you've challenged yourself. But maybe I'm hoping that you had a slight bit of childish joy at some point where somebody has given you permission to make a right old mess. Okay, so I'm going to put my paintbrush down. I'm going to just rinse it a little bit with water.
Just while you're doing that, I'm going to respond to Esther's question.
Oh, go for it.
How do we share our images? I'll send a link out later. I mean, it would be great if you'd like to share them in the Facebook group, if you're happy to do so. But if you'd rather keep them to just this smaller group, then I'll send a link out later so you can each see what other people have made. And we'd love to see the behind-the-scenes shots, the kind of stuff you've made along the way as well. It'd be great to do that. And I agree, Christine, really therapeutic to watch. I'm almost kind of getting zenned in here. I'm trying my best.
Yeah, I mean, I confess that I do actually watch like long-form YouTube videos of people making art because I absolutely love it. But I would also really recommend that you do this yourself. So if you're not doing it right now, then do watch again and get involved because it feels so nice to do it yourself. Okay, so we're going to change materials now and move over to graphite. So if you don't have graphite, then you can use pencils. That's fine. And I'm actually going to do something called bilateral drawing, which you may or may not have heard of before. It's actually something from taken from art therapy. I'm going to do a very simple version of it today, but some people find it very soothing and enjoyable. What I think I might do before I start is just put some masking tape on the corner of my page. What you want is you want at least an A3 size page. So if you're working on A4, I would put 2 pieces of paper next to each other, just so that you've got enough space. So I'm just going to tape it down because the paper tends to move a bit in this exercise. So again, if you are wanting to do a session of a creative session of something, even if you're literally I'm just going to make sure that that's straight. I like things to be straight. Say you're about to do a session of photography, say, or sketching, or like even cooking, or you're just in a bit of a rut and a bad mood, then this is quite a good way to get started and to warm up. Okay, so hopefully that is pretty straight. Okay, I'm going to move those out of the way.
We had a long time spent this morning making sure this was straight enough for Erin. It was straight enough for me, but it wasn't straight enough for Erin.
Basically, I really like making an absolute mess, but within a framework.
Yeah.
But, each to their own. No one else has to take the same approach. Okay, so here we go. So you've got 2 pencils or 2 pieces of graphite or 2 bits of charcoal, 2 biros, whatever you've got. Okay. And then what you're going to do is start to make marks that are the same, but using both hands is quite a strange sensation when you first start. So I've just naturally started doing circles there, but you can also do arches, or you might feel like you want to do something more narrow. It's very interesting. It feels a little bit like, when someone asks you to pat your head and rub your belly. It feels a bit like that. So yeah, you'll feel your breathing might start to go slower. Just totally relax and get into the spirit of it. You want to try and make it as equal and symmetrical as possible. So quite interested to know what shapes you've intuitively made. I seem to be doing a lot of curves. I've made a sort of avocado butterfly. I don't know what I'm making. But yeah, what's really fun is doing this with the lining paper. So, then it's very gestural and you're starting to use your whole body. Okay, so we're just going to keep going for another minute or so. So yeah, if anyone wants to write in the comments, but don't write in the comments right now because you're doing your bilateral drawing. But if you want to let me know how you found this, because some people actually really don't enjoy it. So I'm quite interested.
We had a quick question come in, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just about whether we could use wallpaper instead of lining paper if people have that to hand. But would you recommend?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, use the back of some wallpaper. That's a great idea. Okay. So now I've put myself into some kind of sleepy state now. Okay, so I'm just going to take the marks off the graphite off the page there. Wow, so I can actually feel my heartbeat is quite slow. So that's a very interesting technique, isn't it? So that might lead you into making a piece of art about it. You might want to do that in your art, or you might just want to do that as a warm-up. But it's a really nice, soothing, mindful way of doing things that are making marks that are unplanned. Because what you'll often find is that you get uptight and you start thinking, oh, what are other people going to think of what I'm making? Or, is it going to be perfect? Is it going to look good? But when you do that kind of activity, you're being led completely by your unconscious and your intuition. So it's a very freeing sort of thing to do. Okay, so in complete opposition to that, we're going to now do something a bit more structured. So again, if you could get another piece of paper out. Again, A4 is fine for this one.
It's always interesting how people interpret things. So Esther's also making lots of curvy things, and Orlando commented that looked like a great butterfly. So it's kind of interesting how we interpret other people's work.
Absolutely. And it's also very interesting sort of watching your hand make something that you haven't planned and then seeing imagery in it. And I think that's quite a nice aspect to it as well. Okay, so let's see, that's sort of straight, isn't it? Okay, so am I going to take this down? Yes. Okay, so for this, you're going to need your masking tape. So if you just maybe watch me first before you start doing it. So we're going to tape the papers. If you're using normal masking tape, you might just want to, sounds weird, but you might just want to stick it on your clothes first so that it's not really tacky. And then you're going to chop your page in half, and we're going to make, I think, let's go for four, maybe six. Let's go for six portions. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm just going to put that on my t-shirt just to be totally sure. Okay, so I'm going to tape there. Going to put another piece of tape in the middle. Oh no, we're doing six, aren't we? So I'm going to do one there. Yeah, there we go. Is that, you don't have to do this, but it's quite helpful to remember the order in which you've put the masking tape down for when you peel it off at the end. I probably won't remember. So,
we'll all help you.
Yeah. Yeah. When I get into a tangle, you can help me. Okay, so we're nearly there. So you just need one more piece of tape at the top. So this is a technique that I love doing. So I think you'll see this throughout the course and in my work. Is I'm half very organized and orthogonal, and then I'm half like doing things that are really messy and wild. And so I think mark making is a great way of exploring both sides of my practice. Okay, so I've made wonky squares. They're not even squares. That's fine. Okay, so we're not aiming for perfection. Doesn't matter if yours are all over the place. So let's get the non-skin tape out of the way. Okay, so now I think we'll go back to the Indian ink. Will we go back to the Indian ink? Yes, let's go back to the Indian ink. So again, if you haven't got Indian ink, you can use acrylic paint, watercolor, anything that you've got, which is, kind of has a painty, wet texture. And then we're going to make some marks. But we're going to basically do a different type of mark in each box. So thinking about pressure, speed, and rhythm. So the first one I'm going to do is some very fine sort of stipply marks inspired by the Van Gogh painting. So I'm going to the very tip of the brush. Can you see I'm holding it completely vertically? And I'm just letting the nib of the brush sort of bounce around, not very much pressure at all. And, it's almost creating a kind of animal print type texture. And don't worry about overlapping with the tape because that will form your edge. And we're just tapping away. And again, if you are using the Indian ink, it should be a very nice jet black. And again, we're just tapping away, making these tiny little... I actually spoke to Mark about us maybe putting some music on next time. So we might have some music for this section.
You can play some music at home, by the way. And
Yeah.
let us know what music you're playing. We've got to go for copyright-free music. But
Royalty-free, exactly. But what you'll find is as soon as the music goes on, you'll start responding because your body is basically dancing with your hand, which is a really nice way of seeing mark making. And a lot of the abstract expressionists use music as a way of inspiring their mark making. Okay, so for the next one, I'm going to use the edge of the brush now to make almost sort of little diagonal marks. And again, just don't think too much about what you're doing and just sort of enjoy the feeling. What do you prefer? Do you prefer when the brush is a bit more dry? Like, do you like the brush to be completely full of pigment? Do you want everything completely lined up? Do you want a little bit of variety? I can't help but feel like these look a little bit like animal prints, don't they? And then, again, try to make marks that you wouldn't usually make in your own work if you already are a painter. And if you haven't ever tried this before, I hope that you're finding it enjoyable. Okay. So then the next one, I'm going to splodge quite a lot of ink.
Splodge is an artistic term, isn't it?
Yeah, we're getting really technical now.
Yeah, I can tell.
Splodge, big old splodge. Right, they're not that big. Right, there's some splodges. And then probably I was going to do it with my finger, but yeah, I'm just going to do it with my finger. And then I'm going to squish them with my finger. So you see what's happening now is you're getting a slight unpredictability, but then your fingerprint is actually coming into it. So you've got these kind of unique marks that are completely unique to you. Let's do another couple of splodges. So, this is why it's so interesting that you look at an artist like Norman Ackroyd, who I talked about at the beginning, and, they made he actually passed away last year, which is very sad, but he made a whole lifetime out of work that was monochrome. He found enough fascination in mark making and tone that he never felt like he needed to make work in colour. I mean, he did sometimes, but which I think is absolutely fascinating, really. Okay, so you're all going to kill me. If you've used your finger, that Indian ink will come off with some washing up liquid. So I'm just going to rub that onto the kitchen roll. Okay. So now on the bottom half, I'm actually going to change over from Indian ink to graphite. So again, you can use whatever you're using for the bilateral exercise, so pencil or pen. So I'm going to use graphite. So again, we're going to be thinking about pressure and speed and rhythm. So the thing about graphite is that you can use a lot of pressure and create, very thick, heavy marks. I'm just sort of trying to push and pull. So what you'll see is that occasionally you'll get a really dark area. Oh, whoops, there goes my finger. And then you'll have a really light area. So you start to, you're sort of twisting it and pulling it. And, say you would, I'm very focused on landscape. So, if I'm doing a sketch, sometimes I will literally use my hand to make these random marks, and then what you'll find is foliage or the trees just draw themselves, and you get this sort of natural serendipitous nature of the marks rather than a kind of contrived stilted approach. Okay, so that's that one. Then this one, I'm going to go super light. So basically try and work out the lightest I can go. I'm going to hold it vertical and just basically kind of, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I'm just very lightly scribbling on the page. And this is a technique I often use for conveying water or moving reflective surfaces, where there's this random nature to it that the human hand, when you think too much, can look quite stilted. But actually, what you're doing is I don't know if you're getting this, but I often get this where it feels like it's moving of its own accord. It's a little bit like, sometimes I feel like I'm watching my hand make the work, which is such a nice feeling because, you know, when you're at work, you're always using your logical brain and you're constantly sort of trying to perform in a certain way. And actually what you're doing here is you're not thinking about the outcome and you're just letting your hand make the marks and surprising yourself. So I'm now going over it with another layer where I'm just turning the pressure on and off, basically. So vertically, so I'm pushing down, then pulling up, then pushing down, then pulling up, pushing down, then pulling up, pushing down, pulling up. Okay. And then the very last one, I'm going to go for more of a kind of linear thing. So I'm going to try and use the edge of the blade of the graphite. So if you've got a pencil, use the edge of the pencil. So try and getting this, basically you're trying to get the thickest line you possibly can. And I'm not going for uniform pressure. I'm just trying to explore what textures I can get. And this piece of paper is actually different to the one I used before. So this is the cold pressed paper. So you can see this is very strong tooth and texture. And this paper is actually hot pressed. So it's got a smooth texture. So it means that I'm actually having to completely make the texture myself with the implement. I'm not relying on drawing out the tooth of the paper with my mark making, if that makes sense. So now I'm sort of spinning the top of the graphite this time. And then because I like to do things a bit symmetrical, I'm going to do that side as well. Probably messed up my nice clean line. Okay. So now I'm going to peel the masking tape off. And, you know, we're not on Instagram here, so it's not going to be perfect. It's probably going to completely rip to shreds. But yeah, okay, so it's not too bad. So if you just peel it off. So basically, when I'm learning something new, I really like to go down to a small scale. So I'm probably doing this in the wrong order. Yeah, I need to take this one off next. So this is a really nice thing to do in your sketchbook. You know, just try different techniques in a quite an orderly way. And then sometimes what I like to do is then annotate them. And it just, what I find is, you know, sometimes you do these things and it goes into your sort of short-term memory. But if I start to annotate it, then I really start to form memories in my long-term memory of like what I liked about it and what felt good about it. I just find annotating, I think it's because my background's an architect and we used to have to annotate all of our drawings. So I like to not be precious, basically. So you've made something really neat now, and I'm just going to write on it. So this was made with fingerprints. So obviously none of you can read that, but that's the point. This is my handwriting, which is another form of mark making. And my handwriting changes depending on what tools I'm using. So that's made with fingerprints. I actually loved this one. So I'm just going to write that. Love this. This one was Indian ink. Sort of reminds me of an animal print. And then I'll say, you know, this one could be useful to convey water, etc. So yeah, so I would definitely make notes, because what you'll find is that you'll put it into your sketchbook and then you'll forget what you did. And these, you know, annotations are really helpful. And it just also means that you've sort of, you know, broken the barrier of worrying about being neat. You know, what we're trying to do is learn a skill in a structured way, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to veer into perfectionism. Okay, so I just thought I was going to show you something. Oh yeah.
Just before we move on, I was going to say, Erin, that actually, even that as something for your sketchbooks, actually really quite has artistic value, doesn't it? I would almost, if I'd made that, I'd have framed that, and that would have been the end of my session. Achieved.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll show you an example of exactly that happening. Like I did do a mark making session a while ago. Let's see if I can find it now. And I ended up framing it because I was so pleased with it. I was just sort of messing about. I've lost it now. No. Where was it? Yeah, I see. These are all mark making things, but this one. So what I ended up doing was making a big sheet of marks and then cutting out squares using a picture mount, as a viewfinder, and then selecting ones I liked. And then what I actually did was then frame them. So I totally agree. So I just want to show you another sketchbook thing. So these are my homemade sketchbooks. So I showed you the A4 version, but I often make them out of scraps. So this is just like a Amazon package. I don't know if I'm allowed to say brand names. Whoops. But so this one I've made some collages. So what I do is do some mark making, and then I might chop it up and turn it into a collage. And why am I showing you this? Oh yes, that's why. So this one is one that I do a lot of mark making. So you can see some days I'll do something quite structured. So I'll be like, okay, I want to explore my watercolor technique. So I'll mask off the page and do something like that. But then another day I'll be, more impatient and I'll just do some exploratory things like this. So I guess I just wanted to highlight that to you. So this is another one where I did some watercolor and then added salt and put cling film on, stuff like that. And then, these are all actually sample pack paper. Sorry, let's get that in the middle. That I got as a freebie. So again, don't be precious about the paper that you're using. If you have scrap paper or again samples, things like that, that's all great to put into a sketchbook. Okay.
Just had a quick question from Celia. Thanks, Celia. And Celia is one of the, if not the world's best Photoshop person, and we all know and love her. Celia has asked whether Indian ink would be the same or similar to Chinese ink. I'm so... Erin's right next to me, so I'm looking over there. I'm so sorry. I've got to be looking this way. We've actually put a piece of paper here so we don't look at each other. How bad is that? But is Indian ink similar or the same as Chinese ink, or is there a difference between the two?
That is very, very interesting. And I actually can't tell you the difference. I'm under the impression that Indian ink is like a very dense black and it's waterproof, whereas I think Chinese ink has a slightly more watery and viscous. But I actually don't know, and you're gonna set me off on a rabbit hole now, and I'm gonna go and find out about that. So that's a great question.
And anybody else who might know, please do let us know in the chat.
But for this course, they're interchangeable, and both of them were historically used for calligraphy, which is intrinsically linked to what we're doing today, and it's all about communication and like has then gone on to inspire both Chinese art and Indian art. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, Celia's commented that it doesn't seem that anybody knows the answer, so that's why she was asking as to whether we did. Christine's also put a good link on as well for some of the resources we've been talking about on Amazon as well. So thank you.
Great. Well, that is actually the end of the demonstration for today.
Fantastic. I'm going to give you a huge round of applause. Well done. And thank you so much for everybody else coming along as well today. I'm just going to flick back to our other scene, as it were. So now we've just got Erin and I, and this has been so exciting because we spent weeks and weeks and weeks backwards and forwards on WhatsApp, sharing things, trying to get this to work. And I really appreciate everybody who has come today and everybody who has shared it on social media, because it is totally brand new for us on Conversation. And we just wanted to take the risk because I'm sure you'll agree, we really needed to share Erin with the group because she's so, so wonderful and her art is fantastic. So Erin, thank you so much for coming along today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
And we will see everybody in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks' time, won't we?
I have actually got one last thing to say, Mark.
Go on.
I almost forgot.
Do you want me to go back to the top-down view again?
No, it was just about a homework prompt.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely optional. But yeah, if you want to do some work between now and the next session and just try out some of those techniques, I would recommend, getting a sketchbook in place so you're ready for next week. So maybe one like the ones I showed you, or, one that you might already be using. and maybe choose sort of one or two of your favorite techniques that you use today and do them again. And then maybe even have a think about how these things might start to apply to your photography. It might be a bit tenuous at this stage, but it's quite good to start thinking about that, I think. But yeah, it's just some general pointers really. And then they can post them on the sharing board. Is that right?
You can post them. I'll pop a link out to that. You can post them on the sharing board. If you'd like to, you can put them on Facebook as well, or Instagram. Just tag us in, because we'd really love to involve other people in this as well, because it's great fun. And it's just like a guilty pleasure we had to have a go at.
Yeah, definitely.
But otherwise, thank you so much, Erin, and thank you everybody else. And we will see you in a fortnight.
Bye.
Take care, everybody else. Thank you for the lovely comments as well.